kick off our meeting today, we have two of our leaders whom we always look up for guidance and advice. And we have our District Director, DTM Nelson Menezes, and our International Director, DTM Eletaros from South Africa. So thank you very much, both of you, for joining us. Let's begin by inviting our leader for the district, a man from whom I have learned a lot in the past few years. He has been somebody who has carried the legacy, so to say, forward, believes in teamwork, and has always been guiding and inspiring the district. Please help me welcome our District Director, DTM Nelson Menezes.
Respected International Director, Aleta, fellow district leaders, our District 105 Advisor, DTM Balaji, fellow Toastmasters, and welcome guests. It's a good morning to you on a busy Friday, Saturday in our District 105. Lots happening everywhere, but we are here to get the best out of very, very important and timely session put in by our Program Quality Director, DTM Gurvinder Singh, and his entire team. Today, I feel we are absolutely privileged to have our International Director to be in our midst to talk to us. We have 14 regions in the world, and our International Director, Distinguished Toastmaster Aleta, is someone who represents us at the Board of Directors. We also have our two region advisors, DTM Sunil, DTM Robert James Taru, and now DTM Sudhit will be in charge of District 105. What I wish to tell each one of you today is these leaders are always supporting us, and their communication is more with the district leaders. They invest a lot of time to ensure that we district leaders get the full support, the arms, the ammunition, the resources, what we need to carry on our work. I am really happy and thankful to ID Aleta and our region advisors for the wonderful support they have given to us during this entire year. So thank you, ID Aleta, for your presence, for your support throughout the year to us, and really we are blessed to have you this morning in our midst today.
Thank you.
Today, we have a wonderful session organized by DTM Gurvinder and his entire PQD team who have been doing a marvelous job. So, DTM Gurvinder, I wish you super success. Thank you for this timely session for our District 105. And I love the preparation. I'm part of the team and I could see the dry runs which they are having to make sure that our speakers, our trainers, and the core team are in sync, which really speaks volumes to me that they are fully prepared to give us an experience and something to take away home. To all the trainers, I wish you good luck. Thank you so much, DTM Gurvinder. And to all, let us sit back, enjoy, because today promises something very special. The next 2 hours are going to be worth learning something, and we will be taking something back home for sure. DTM Gurvinder, good luck, and back to you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, DD Nelson, for joining us today morning and giving your blessings to this group. I'm sure we will all have an interesting learning session ahead of us. And I always look up to our next speaker, our International Director, DTM Aleta. She is somebody who I had the opportunity to meet once personally and was very, very inspired by her vision, by her thoughts, by her value system, and the priceless nuggets of Toastmasters wisdom that she always shares with us in various forums. So ladies and gentlemen, please help me welcome our International Director, DTM Aleta, to share her wisdom with us today morning. DTM Aleta.
Thank you so much, PQD Govinder. District 105, greetings from South Africa. To your leaders, to our RAs, Sunil and Balaji, and to each of our members. It's a Absolute pleasure and a privilege to be with you this morning. It's election fever time. It's something that I find fascinating every single year. And I found a quote that I actually adapted to the Toastmasters world, and it says, voting is the expression of our commitment to ourselves, to one another, to this district, and to Toastmasters International. It's a very important part of what we do every year. And even though our election process is the same across all clubs and all districts, our experience of it might be different depending on where we come from. My own experience in my home club, there was never a contested election. We were just so happy. People said, I'll take on a role of club officer, and we applauded loudly. In my district, we don't elect our area directors, so I've never witnessed that. And at district level, we had some positions that were contested, like the club growth director and the district public relations manager, but it never really got very ugly. It got very close. Last year, 2 years ago, we had one election where the winning margin was 1 vote. That's how close it was. And it's something that draws us all in. It's important that we are an active participant in the elections, and it's important that we understand what's expected of us. I've had the privilege of being at International Convention for a number of years and seeing the international elections. And some of you may know that some of them are hotly contested. The second vice president election is always very closely contested. And some of the region elections for international director. This year, Region 11, our region, had 6 candidates step forward. Of those 6, 3 have been nominated by the International Leadership Committee. So there's a lot of contestation, if I can put it that way, people wanting to serve. And that's always a sign of a successful region or a district or a club or area. If people want to step up for service, you're doing something right. And the biggest drama that I've witnessed at international level was in I forget the year, so I'm not going to quote that one, but there was one where a result was announced and a member stood up at the international business meeting and protested the result. And he said they'd calculated the winner incorrectly based on the number of votes. And it was wonderful to watch that in process. You can imagine it's quite dramatic. The winner's already been announced. But they called a pause to the proceedings, and the people who were running the meeting consulted and discovered that there had been an error. And they had to come back and say, I'm sorry, the person who we said was elected as international director is in fact not the international director. The other person had in fact been elected. So you can imagine the drama of that. But in the midst of all the drama and the emotion, there was a robust process. And our election process exists to provide structure and transparency. And when used correctly, it builds trust. We all need to trust that the system is the winner at the end of the day, because we understand what's required and we go through the process and we know that it's fair to everybody involved. So how does that translate when you're very emotional? When you are supporting a candidate or you are the candidate yourself, and perhaps your candidate or you don't get elected. There's a lot of time and effort that's gone into it. And it can be heartbreaking. I've seen candidates in tears when they don't win. And all that is perfectly understandable. There's high emotion in elections, even those that you aren't closely connected to. I always smile because every 4 years I get intensely involved in the American presidential election. I'm not an American citizen. I don't live in America, but I love watching and following, and I get very het up at times at the who's doing what, and I'm not even involved. So by its very nature, elections can be very emotive. And what it's taught me is that there's always 2 sides to a story. Elections can get very personal and not in a good way. I have seen some districts where there seems to be a tendency to try and use election rules and processes to find fault with the other candidate and to try and disqualify them. The rules are there for a reason, and if someone violates them, there are consequences. But I'm not in favor of kind of actively trying to do dirty campaigning to try and get rid of someone who's standing against someone that you are supporting. So be careful of that, because that to me is not what we are about. In 2016, when I was at the International Convention, we were in Washington, DC, and that of course was during the presidential election. And one of our leaders got up on stage and said, let us as Toastmasters show the world how to run positive, fair elections. And that sat with me. We don't like dirty campaigning. We don't like bad mouthing your opponent. We would rather run on your own merits and let the district council decide who's the best person for that role. Don't do negative campaigning. It doesn't serve any of us. There does come a time when an election is over and you may or may not like the result. It's just like in a speech contest where you cannot believe that the judges chose one person as the winner, where you were convinced the other person should have won. And this is a time where we have to dig deep, and often we have to have a certain degree of emotional maturity, where we have to step away and say, it's not about me. The district council has voted. The district council has made a decision, perhaps one that I don't agree with, but it's now time to move on. And our duty as Toastmasters is to support whoever was elected and to let them know that we are there to support them and to support the district, even if they weren't our first choice. So in my world, I think a true Toastmaster is able to set aside their disappointment, their frustration, even their anger, and go up to the person who the council elected and say, I wish you well, I'm here to support you. Let me know what I can do, because it's about the district, it's not about one individual. And the true Toastmaster also goes up to those who lost the election and thanks them for running and reassures them that their talents are not going to be unnoticed or go to waste, that they will still be a contribution in the district, even though they didn't win that particular election. Some people come back and they try again, others don't. But it doesn't mean that their value as a Toastmaster is diminished. It just means their role is different for that year. So we have a voice. We get to vote. And once we voted, we also get to let it go and just understand what it is that has happened. The council has spoken, and that's what it is. So I think our challenge today, and I'm so delighted to see that you've got this session going, is to understand what lies ahead, understand what's allowed and what isn't allowed, and then work within that to choose the best leaders for District 105. Elections, even though we get so emotive about them, it's just a mechanism to get the willing and able people in the right positions so that we can grow our district. And think about it on a higher level. Ultimately, all of us are here to make the Toastmasters experience available to more people. We, as we participate in the program, we grow in confidence, and we take that confidence out of that meeting room to our families, to our careers, to our communities, and ultimately to our countries. And our countries need inspiring leaders with integrity, and we help build those leaders in Toastmasters. And you as District 105 have got a proud record of growing leaders and of just being incredibly successful. And your elections are part of that. So go forth and vote. Enjoy the election fever. Manage the emotions. Support everyone. And once the winners are announced, support your district. So I look forward to seeing your elections. I look forward to welcoming and congratulating the new leaders. And I look forward to District 105 continuing to inspire us as you show us best practice of how things are done and continue to show us what can be done even in a pandemic. So thank you for inviting me to be part of this today. And PKD Gurbinder and your team, congratulations on putting a great session together. I'm sure everyone will benefit from what you have to offer today. Back to you.
Thank you so much, International Director Eleta. This was exactly the start that we were looking for. Your priceless, what I call as the nuggets of Toastmasters wisdom, which comes from years of experience and participating in various conferences and conventions and handling so many leadership positions. Really appreciate you taking time out today to be with us this morning. Thank you so much once again. And fellow Toastmasters, now that we have started what I say with a bang, let's now start our learning journey. And our first speaker for the day is a very well-known figure in the District 105. Everybody knows him, but still I will introduce him. And this day, the introductions are almost one line long because all the speakers wanted to speak more themselves and rather than let me speak for them. So the introduction for our first speaker is DTM Hariharan Iyer. He's a trainer by profession and a speaker by passion. Please help me welcome DTM Hariharan Iyer to take us through the first session. DTM Hari.
DTM Gurvinder Singh Pun, thank you so much for that one line. In fact, I love that line. I keep it that way. And I've learned from you because it's all about the effect that you create from the learning, then having all that stuff that is written as gibberish. Sometimes that happens to me. Nonetheless, Toastmasters, wish you all a good morning. And in fact, what a way to start with our international director giving us some fantastic tips. Now, when I came to Toastmasters in 2013 for the first time, of course, after a long break, I saw a slide which said that Toastmasters is a fraternity where the member is right at the helm of affairs. And it was a pyramid where the member was right at the top there. And I was also told that the election process is completely democratic. And I must merge two aspects here. Servant leadership as a concept in the 1970s was possibly not heard of until we saw it happen and take shape in Toastmasters. Then came the definition of democracy. It is by the people, for the people, and of the people. And indeed, Toastmasters is by the members, for the members, and of the members. Therefore, it is the members who are the cornerstone to all of this, be it elections, be it the way the organization is run. So this is what I have for you on today's session. So what is it that I'm going to be covering? So we're going to be looking at the election protocol, and my simple or humble suggestion to you is if you can grab a piece of paper and a writing instrument, please note down your questions so that we can go through this entire session and take your questions right at the end. That's one. Second, I'm going to be covering two basic aspects. One is the club elections. The second is the area elections. So how is it going to go through is first we look at what happens before the election, during the election, and after the election, also known as the BDA concept in the learning world. Fantastic. So having said that, what is this election fever all about? We're trying to put our best leaders on the top there. Why do we need our leaders there? So that we will have a clear vision of where we want to be. Even in such trying times like COVID, which has happened once in 100 years. In fact, Toastmasters did not see it when it happened with Spanish flu, but it's seen with COVID. And we have survived 1 year, and we're still surviving and going strong, speaks volumes of those leaders who are leading us. So it becomes our key responsibility to ensure that our leaders who are replaced into the next term are as capable, if not more capable than who we have. Therefore, this process becomes absolutely sacrosanct. As they say, the sanctum sanctorum is that place where the most powerful items stay. This is the sanctum sanctorum of Toastmasters. So what do we have to begin with? So I have the basic objectives. So by the end of the session, you will ideally recognize what the election process is. We'll discuss the various aspects of the process, nitty-gritties, and then we take this learning back to our clubs and to our areas and apply them. So what are we going to be covering? We look at, in general, the hygiene aspects that are required. Now, this is, as rightly put by DTM Alita, one of the biggest contested areas of where you have a lot of protests coming in is the hygiene aspect. So you have eligibility, the policies and processes that need to be followed, and the protocols that we need to keep in mind. Some of those gray areas, or possibly those very thin lines where people actually tend to go on the other side, and then it is not the right thing to do. So we'll look at all of that. We'll look at club elections. So what are the positions that are there? What happens before the election, during the election, after the election? And what is the voting process? When we look at the area, we look at the scope. So who's going to be there during the area elections? What is the quorum like? So we look at the quorum very specifically, because here the quorum and the club, the quorum becomes very important. So we look at the quorum, and we look at proxies where people cannot or are not able to come in and represent their positions at that particular election. Now, from here, let's dive straight into our session. So first is the hygiene aspect. So what we need to understand is the Toastmaster year follows a July to June year. So 1st of July to 30th of June is said to be the Toastmaster year. So we have all our leaders who are elected for this particular term. And where do you find these leaders? We find them at the area, we find them at the club first, area, division, district, and it keeps going up. Now, who can contest any election is a member in good standing. So how do you understand whether a member is in good standing? Should have paid the dues, number one. And the club that they're representing also should be in good standing. So that's an important aspect as well. The next aspect is the election process itself. You need to follow the TMI guidelines. So there are set standards, steps, procedures, processes in place that have been laid down, very clearly documented on what people must do or must not do during an election. So this document, if need be, we can share it with you because we already have it with us. Then we have, what are the documents that are required? Now, just a quick one for you all. We will send this presentation along with an entire PDF document, which will get into more details of all of these points so that even what I'm saying may be bullet pointed, but you may have more aspects around what I'm speaking. So if you're able to grab those notes, great. Else we'll also send this presentation along with the PDF to you. Let's get into the documentation. So you have the governing documents, which have been laid down by Toastmasters. That's one thing that we all need to possibly as leaders read through it, because that will lay down the process. We have the Articles of Association of Toastmasters International, the bylaws of Toastmasters International, the district administrative laws. And this becomes very important when you start looking at elections at area and division and district. The club constitution. So every club has got a constitution. We need to know that too. And last not the least, the policy and protocols that are laid down by Toastmasters International. Now, these are the documents which are possibly those guiding lights. When you're driving, you have those lights in the dark to give you that lighting on the road, those halogen or possibly those sodium vapor lamps. These are those that will give us that particular light on the road if we are stuck in the dark. Now, having said that, what are the general rules that everybody needs to keep in mind? As I said, a member in good standing. Every member in good standing has got the right to vote in a club election and for a club officer. Please remember this. Every member in the club who is a member in good standing and belongs to that club has got the right to put up those club officers. Now, I said that the member is right at the top there, at the helm. It is the member who decides how we function, because they are the ones who nominate and elect those leaders. Because once the club leaders are voted in, nominated, and are put up into their offices, they are the ones who are representing the members in the various levels or the way in the area or the division of the district. Therefore, it is very important for our members to understand where their strength lies and what powers they have. As I said, the member is right at the top there. The next one is the area voting rights. So we have 3 people who can vote from a club: the president, the vice president education, and the vice president membership. These are the 3 who can vote in an area. And in the district elections, you can have the president and the VP education who can cast their vote. Now, this is all general. I'm sure these are more of the hygiene aspects and smaller details that we need to keep in mind. Now, let's dive straight into the club elections. I will stop for about 30 seconds for you to possibly just take some notes if you want, or just put your thoughts together before I can go into the club election. So I'm just going to take 30 seconds. I'm pausing for about 30 seconds. Excellent. Now let's get into our club elections. So club elections, one of those most important. I remember DTM Balaji telling me once, very early in my career, when I met him for the first time in Toastmasters, he said, elections and contests, the most important is at the club level, because that's where we form all those results that get possibly rolled up to the top. Why did he say that? And when I became the VP membership within the first 1 year of joining the club, and then became the VP education, and then eventually became the division director, I realized what he said. The power of a club is those 8. And I pick up this 8 is great. In fact, it's not me who coined it. Apparently, it was Wells Fargo that coined it. So I'm just taking it from there, stealing it from there. Rather, I need to give them the credit. 8 is great. It is these 8 people who are those most important, possibly, if I could put them up as the different parts of a human body that function, that take the members along. And I'm sure each of you would know those 8. So let me list them down for you. We know 1 is the president, 2, VP education, 3, the VP membership, 4, the VP PR, 5, the secretary, 6, the treasurer, 7, the sergeant at arms. Who is this 8th person? We usually forget this person because sometimes this person runs away. The 8th person is the past president of the club, immediate past president of the club. So they are the ones who are at any point in time that particular engine who are powering the club. Now their term, usually elections happen in the month of May and take charge in the 1st of July if it is an annual term. So there are 2 types of ExComs that happen. One is an annual term wherein you've got the members serving for an entire 12 months. And you also have some possible ExComs that serve only for 6 months. That is an biannual. So you have elections that happen in May and in November, and they take charge on the 1st of July and 1st of January. So they change twice over. But in District 105, if I'm not mistaken, I have not seen any biannual terms as of now. But please forgive me if I'm being ignorant and I've gone wrong with this. I have not seen any, but I've seen a few in India, though. Now, so what is it that we need to keep in mind before the elections? So the ExCom will decide a date as to when they want to have the elections. The president will appoint a club leadership committee of 3 members. They have to be 3 active members. The committee nominates the candidates based on, we look at how the nominations happen, and the immediate past president is the chair of the leadership committee. So the leadership committee, the chair plus 3. Now, once this committee is formed, what happens then? We call it the CLC, the Club Leadership Committee, will keep updating the club on a regular basis. What are they going to update? How many nominations have come in? And who are the nominated candidates based on the credentials that they are checking? Member in good standing, that's one of the most important. They will update the club on all of this during the business meeting session of every club meeting. Once the names are consented by the members, those are the names that will go in. And we need to understand that floor nominations for club elections are valid, but they should be active, good standing members. You cannot have members who are not good standing and not active. Once this is done, once they have got all of this process in place, the names have been received, the CLC along with the chair have got the names, decided what's going to happen, then this is what happens. The most important aspect is you need to ensure that the ExCom nominates an election officer. This person is usually the one who will conduct the elections. The secretary needs to confirm the quorum. So what's the quorum? The quorum is half plus 1. So if a club has got 20, you need to have 10 plus 1 member. That makes it 11. Each member gets only 1 vote. And all of this happens in a secret ballot. Now what happens is, let's assume that we've got 1 member who's standing unopposed and there is no opposition for this particular member. You do not go through the entire process of voting for that 1 member. Ideally, it would be a unanimous vote wherein the secretary will cast 1 vote. So we look at that when the election comes in detail. So unanimous vote is possible only when there is 1 person contesting in one particular room. Now, on election day, what happens? On election day, the election officer will conduct the entire proceedings. The secretary will come in even before the election begins and confirms that, yes, the quorum is met with. If the quorum is not met with, then you would have to have another date fixed and have the election postponed for that day. The election officer will announce the position, can start with the sergeant at arms or start with the president. I've seen a lot of election officers starting with the president and they go down with each roll. Then the election officer will announce that the nomination is open for a floor, open on the floor. If you got more than 1 member, say 2 or 3 or 4 members, then each of them who are contesting, who are candidate, who are fighting that election on that day, they will have a 2-minute speech. Then what happens is the members vote. There are 2 ballot counters who will count the votes. And the highest number of votes that is received by a particular candidate is announced as the winner. Also, what we need to understand is if you got more than 2, if you got 3 or 4, then you have that rule of 50% of votes being, if 50% of the votes are received by 1 person, then that person automatically becomes a winner. Or you will have to keep running the process until you eliminate all those people who have got lesser number of votes than the highest one, and then you come to the highest winner. So if you got 3 candidates contesting for a particular role, you will have 2 rounds of elections, and that's how you come to the final one. If there is no opposition, there is only 1 person fighting for a particular role or nominating himself or herself for that role, then the secretary will just cast 1 vote as I would call it an academic vote, and then the secretary will upload all the names on the TMI website. So the secretary's role becomes very important. So the vice president education, president, and the secretary, if you remember, are the key people to form a club. And this is why the secretary is such an important spock on that particular three-man committee. Now, this is about the club elections. What happens in an area election? Area election is a little more, I will not say complicated, it's a little more easier. However, the reason is there is only one position, but the nitty-gritties are a little more. Now, I'm going to give you about 30 seconds to assimilate all that I told you about the club elections before I get into the area elections. Just 30 seconds, quick one. Fantastic. So what happens in an area election? Similar concepts. The requirement is that the area election, I told you, it's a little more, nitty-gritties are a little more, not as complicated because only one position. What we need to understand is that the area election needs to be conducted 2 weeks before the DTAC. We call it the DTAC, but it's idly known as the district annual business meeting, because that's when the business meeting happens. 2 weeks before or 4 weeks after, within 4 weeks after or 2 weeks before. You cannot do it before or after this particular time period. So very important for us to remember that. Who can contest as an area director? Again, member in good standing, and the person should have held a position in a club, one of those 7 positions or the 8th position, for at least 6 months. Pardon the spelling mistake. In fact, it is LEAST. I'll correct that and send it across to you. So the member should have been there as a club officer and then can apply for an area director role for at least 6 months. Now, who all vote during this period? And this is where there has been an addition in the last 2 years. So earlier it used to be the club presidents, the club vice presidents, the club vice president memberships, the area director who's serving now, the program quality director for the area, the club growth director for area, and the area secretary were added a few years later. But this is how the votes would happen. So you've got at any point in time 7 people, out of which the first 3 would get multiplied by the number of clubs. So if you got 4 clubs, you would have 3 into 4, 12, 12 plus another 4, which would be 16. So that's how the voting is going to happen. So you have all of these people who are going to be getting into that room and going to be voting. Now, what we need to understand is, what are the points to remember? There needs to be a quorum. Majority of voting area of council members should be present or should have proxies. Now, what's a proxy? A proxy is supposing I am a member of a club, and on that particular day when the elections are happening, I physically cannot be present, or I cannot be present even virtually, because nowadays elections also happen virtually. I can give my rights to vote to any one paid, active, good standing member from the club. Now that's the proxy for an area vote. No quorum, no election. Very simple. You cannot fudge this. No quorum, no election, because if you raise a protest, then TMI will take it up very seriously and even cancel the election. So please note, no vote, no quorum, no election. Another meeting has to be decided, and then you have a quorum fixed and then have the election. And I told you a proxy has to be designated. It has to be in writing for any paid member of the club, a member in good standing. Now, what happens in the process? Again, it's a secret ballot. The winner is decided by the majority of votes. No majority happens, the election will continue without the person who's got the lowest vote. So let me give you an example. There are 3 people contesting. Let us say the first person got 40% of the votes, the second person got another 35% of the votes. So that is 75%. The third person got 25% of the votes. So we'll have the first and the second going in, because the first person didn't get 50% of the votes. So you'll have the first and the second going in to the next round, whereas the third person will have to be dropped because he or she has got only 25% of the votes, or the least number of votes. In the second round, you'll have the first and the second person. Election will happen. One will come out as the winner, whoever gets the highest number of votes. The area director then notifies the district director of the elections. So he or she will inform the district director in writing, saying that elections are held on so and so day, and this is what happened, and these are the winners, or this is the winner on that particular day. What we need to understand is it is the area director's responsibility to ensure that this process is followed to the T. This is very important, and this is where the value of integrity and that respect for the members comes in. Because after all those people who are coming there are paid members and are representing us at some point in time. Now, when the elections are decided, you need to ensure that there is a written nomination that goes out. So as an area director, you need to, or he or she needs to ensure that there is a written email going out to the president stating that, yes, we're going to be having our area director elections. This is the date. Please send me your nominations. The area director then announces the result. In fact, after the nominations have come in, it has to be a written nomination wherein the person sends a formal email. Earlier it is to be written, so it is to be documents written down. Fill up the nomination form and the officer's agreement form. Send it to the area director. If there's only one person who is battling it out there, then it's the area director can directly announce it. But if it is more than one, then you have the election that's going to be called in. Also,
you have 15 minutes.
Thank you. Also, what we need to understand is there is a written notice, as I told you, that the area director will send to the presidents. This includes the date, the qualification criteria, and the voting members. So who are the people who are going to be voting? What's the qualification criteria for the people who are going to be standing for elections? And what is the date, or when is it being conducted? All the candidates who are contesting for the elections can be present there, including the members who are going to be contesting from the floor. Voting rights will be given only to the council members and to the proxy holders. Nobody else is allowed to vote, but I'm sure they can witness the elections for sure. On election day, what happens? The area director now announces the nominations. He says, okay, all these people are nominated. They're sent in their forms. Anybody wants to nominate themselves from the floor, and anybody who is a serving officer, good standing member, or has served in a particular role in a club can nominate themselves from the floor. The person needs to sign the officer's agreement and the release statement, give it to the area director. Now, if there are more than one person, then you'll have that particular 2-minute speech, and then the election will start. Now, what is the order of calling in the people for the speech? Remember, it is the alphabetical order of the last name. So my name is Hariharan V. So I will ideally get right at the end because my name starts with a V. Nonetheless, so let us say the name is DTM Gurvinder Singh Pun. So we'll take Gurvinder Singh Pun. So we will use P as the alphabet of the second name. Use that as in the order that it falls in English, right? Once that is done, we know that the district director is going to send out the nominations or the list of the winners, not nomination, the list of the winners to the district director. Now, people also have this question. So how do we have our voting being done? Voting can be done on various platforms. You have election buddy, which is recommended by Toastmasters. You have election runner that is actually recommended by Toastmasters. If the council members have only one vote, if you find that the person is not representing multiple clubs, does not represent multiple clubs, then you can have a survey or a poll online directly. The current area director has to inform the district director of the results and send along with the result the officer agreement and release statement. And this is very important for every area director who's going to become an area director from here who's contesting elections. Remember, it is our duty as area directors to send not only the result but also the officer agreement and the release statement to the district director. Great. That brings me to the end of this session. In fact, I think I finished my session a little faster than I wanted to. Please take about 30 seconds to assimilate this information before I hand over this virtual platform to DTM Gurbinder Singh. So you can take about 30 seconds, write down what I have gone through so that you can put your questions up a little later. Ladies and gentlemen, as I said, very simple is this is a fraternity by the members, for the members, and of the members. It's very important that we give them a fair deal to work and to elect their leaders, because they are those leaders who are going to be serving us, and they are known as servant leaders. That is why I humbly request all of you, if you are taking up roles to become election, to actually conduct elections, or you're looking to become officers, please read the guidelines thoroughly so that you know it at the back of your hand and ensure that we have a free, fair, and fun-filled election. DTM Gurbinder Singh, over to you.
Thank you so much, DTM Hariharan. Really appreciate how simply you have put together this interesting concept of elections at clubs and areas. And I really liked your slides, the pictures, the beautiful aeroplanes and the rockets, which kind of connects to the theme of what you are talking. Really appreciate your efforts. And we will have question and answer session at the end of the whole event after the second speaker has also spoken. Let's take a few minutes. I have posted a form in the chat box where you can put your attendance together, and those people who will put it there, we will be able to send you the recording and the presentation of today's session. So please make sure you take a moment now to do that. We are now getting into a break for 5 minutes. Starting now, Mr. Timer, please monitor the break for 5 minutes. And at the end of 5 minutes, we will come back and start our next session, which is the district elections. In the meanwhile, please just refreshen yourself, come back, recharge in 5 minutes, and having filled up your attendance sheet. Thank you. Welcome back, Toastmasters, from the break. And we now move into the second part of today's session, which is led by DTM Sandeep Vengsarkar. DTM Sandeep Vengsarkar is a past division director. We all know him very fondly. He's an IT professional, a very senior executive. And this year, he holds a very critical position in the district, which is the district leadership chairman. He is helping the whole district to elect leaders for this year. Please help me welcome DTM Sandeep Vengsarkar to take us through this interesting second half of today's session. And stay tuned for question answers after the end of that session. Please welcome DTM Sandeep.
Thank you, DTM Gurbinder, and good morning to all the leaders present here today. There is always the coming after DTM Hariharan is like a double-edged sword. There is the negative part to that is that the way he goes through our education session to trying to cope up with that kind of an education session is a very difficult one, and you're always running behind. The positive part to that is the fact that he has covered quite a few things which I now don't need to cover as a part of my session. So thank you, DTM Hariharan, for some of those things, and as I will definitely try to keep up with the quality of that education, but I'm sure it's going to be significantly short at the end of it in terms of the way you presented your session. So let me start my presentation. Just give me a minute while I share the screen. I hope everyone is able to see my screen now.
Yes, we can see it, Sandeep.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, so the way I'm going to go through this is talk to you about the district officers, who are the district officers, what is the process in terms of the nominations, and finally talk about what exactly happens on election day. I'm expecting this to take approximately 30 to 35 minutes. Any questions that you have, if you can put up them up in the chat, we will take those questions during the Q&A session. So very quickly, and this is an extract from the district leadership handbook. If you look at the district leadership positions, that's the positions which are listed on that circle. The district director being at the center, assisted by the program quality director and the club growth director. And this in normal parlance is called a district trio. And also supported by the other members of the district team, which is the administration manager, the finance manager, the public relations manager. You would potentially, in addition to that, this district leadership position consists the division director and the area director. During the course of this session, which I'm going to cover, I'm going to talk about the elections of the district director, the program quality director, the club growth director, and the division director. The reason being, the administration manager, the finance manager, and public relations managers are appointed by the elected district director subsequent to the elections being completed. The election of the area director has already been covered by the session of DTM Hariharan, so that's something which I'm not going to cover during the course of this session. Now, what's the eligibility? If you look at every position has got a certain amount of eligibility, and the eligibility for the district director to have served at least 6 consecutive months as a club officer or a club president specifically, and 12 consecutive months as a PQD or a club growth director or a division director or a combination thereof. What does that mean? You could have potentially served as a club president for 6 months, but you would have also need to serve as a program quality director for at least a year, or you could have been a program quality director for 6 months and a division director. For the program quality director and a club growth director, you need to have served as a program quality director or a club growth director or an area director or a division director for approximately 12 months. Now, for the division directors, they would have need to have served as, sorry about that. So as a division director, you would have had to serve as 6 consecutive months as members of the district council. Now, members of the district council are, in addition to the district team, are the area directors and also the club president and the club vice president education. So that is one of the key things you need to have served as a member of the district council. Area directors, I think DTM Hariharan has already covered the eligibility as a part of his session, so I will not get into it at this moment. Now, where does the whole election process starts? Now, this election process starts as mentioned by DTM Gurbinder, by the appointment of the district leadership committee chair by the district director. Incidentally, this year it happens to be me, but it keeps on changing year after year on the appointment of the district director. The district leadership committee chair then asks for nominations from all the members of the district, all good standing members, as long as they are otherwise eligible as per the criteria mentioned on the previous slide, can nominate themselves for the positions of the district leadership. They could also be nominated by another Toastmaster, but they need to sign the district leadership release form. Now, every candidate who is desirous of contesting as a district leadership position needs to go through the DLC nomination process. And we will come to that in just a moment. This is a new rule which has been put in place from last year onwards. No candidate is allowed to contest from the floor of the house if they have not gone through the DLC process. So all nominations need to come in, they need to go through the DLC process, and only then that candidate can contest from the floor of the house. Now, how does the nomination process move ahead? Once the nomination have been received by the individual candidates, either by themselves or through other members, there is a person nominated by the individual division directors to be a member of the district leadership committee. This district leadership committee then forms the core group which interviews the candidates who have nominated themselves or have been nominated by other Toastmasters to check whether they can take up the roles as a part of the district leadership. Now, the competency framework as described in the district competency manual, I'm sorry about that, it's not the district leadership handbook, it's a different document which is called a district leaders competency document, which is used as a framework for evaluating the candidates. This normally goes through an interview process where every candidate is interviewed by multiple members of the district leadership committee. Based on these interviews, the district leadership committee members then submit their decision to the district leadership committee chair, and the nominations are finally decided by a majority decision by the members interviewing the candidates. The DLC chair then submits the report to the district director, which basically contains two things. One is the candidates who are nominated by the district leadership committee and candidates who are otherwise eligible but are not nominated by the DLC committee. What does this mean? The candidates who are otherwise eligible but are not nominated by the DLC committee can still stand from election from the floor, provided they have indicated their intention to the district director at least 2 weeks prior to the district council meeting. No other candidate will be allowed to stand from the floor. Eligibility to vote at the district council meeting. Only the district council members are eligible to vote at a district election. Voting members, as I mentioned earlier, will include the club presidents, the club vice presidents, and the members of the district executive committee. If a club is considered inactive or suspended, then the club officers are not entitled to vote until the dues have been paid. The club president and the vice president education each have one vote on the council. Please note, and that's the reason it is in red, there are no proxies allowed this year, and please ensure that if you are going to vote, your vote counts and you are present at the district council meeting to cast your vote in person. The proxies were allowed till when we were in a physical mode, but in this year, especially because we are in a virtual mode, no proxies are being allowed. The key role in the whole election process is played by the credentials chair. The credential chairs assist the district in conducting a successful election meeting. The role of the credentials chair is to ensure that the ballots are only issued to the current district council members, and that is something which is controlled effectively by the credentials chair. Now, what are the general guidelines for the elections? The quorum of constitutes of 1/3 of all members of the district council need to be present and voting at the time of the district council meeting. The district director is the election officer at the district council meeting and will conduct the election supported by the credentials chair. Before the election starts, the DLC chair or his designated member, designated appointee will present the committee report and read out the names of the candidates nominated for each one of the positions. The election sequence goes like this. The first election to be held will be for the district director, followed by the program quality director, then the club growth director, and then the division directors as per the alphabetical order, the way we follow it in District 105. Now I've mentioned, if you look at the slide, I have mentioned the club growth director in red. This is specifically for this year, where we as District 105 will be electing 2 club growth directors as mandated by TMI. Please note, this is going to be CGD 1 and CGD 2 and not necessarily the club growth directors for the new districts that are going to be formed. The roles and responsibilities of these 2 club growth directors will be determined by the district director once the elections are completed. So these are considered as 2 different elections, which is CGD 1 and CGD 2, and not for one single election. So for this year, which is 21-22, the sequence will be district director, program quality director, CGD 1, CGD 2, and then the division directors. Please also note that for the division directors, the role of a division director is considered to be a single role, and which specifically means that if you are nominated as per the DLC report to stand for as a division director for a particular division, you can stand from the floor for any specific division coming later on, as long as you are not elected prior to that division election taking place. Now, what happens on the elections day? And this happens at the time of the district council meeting. The election officer, in this case, the district director, will announce the position for which the election is being conducted. At this same time, the election officer will announce the names of the nominated candidates and will also ask if there are any floor candidates who want to nominate themselves for the position that is being announced for election. Please note again, the earlier rule of the candidate, the floor candidate having gone through the DLC process still applies. In case there is more than one candidate for a particular position, every candidate will, including the floor candidate, will give a speech for 2 minutes. Now, these speeches are delivered in alphabetical order by the candidate's last name. Please note, the candidate's last name will be determined by the last name as existing in the TMI rules and not specifically mentioned by the candidate in either of the forms submitted. It is the rules as per the TMI which will give us the last name of the candidate. In case for some reason the candidate is absent, the candidate's representative may give the speech. Now, once these speeches are completed, balloting for each office takes place immediately following the candidate's speeches for that role. So once the candidate speeches are over, the election officer will call for the elections for the District 105 2021-22 elections. An e-voting platform will be used for the voting and the ballot counting. The details of the platform and the actual working of the platform will be done subsequently as a part of one of the district sessions, and this will be tested so everyone is aware of how this whole process works. Once every election needs to be completed and the winner announced before we move to the subsequent election. So until and unless a specific election is completed, we will not move to the next position. If there is only one candidate for an office, the district director, that is the election officer, may entertain a motion to dispense with the secret ballot and ask the administration manager to cast a single vote for the candidate. I'm now going to move ahead in terms of the actual elections taking place. So how is the winner determined? Now, this is a question which remains in the minds of most of the candidates. How is the winner determined? The nomination process has happened. Subsequent to that, we have had the speeches by the candidates. The votes have been cast by the members who are present and voting. And now, how is the winner decided? A candidate who receives a majority of the votes, that's 50% plus 1, is declared elected. If no candidate receives a majority of the votes, then voting continues till a candidate receives the majority. We will look at this as a scenario examples in the next 1 or 2 slides, but just stay with this for a moment. Prior to the second ballot, the nominee having the lowest vote on the first ballot and any nominee receiving less than 10% of the vote shall be dropped. And on each succeeding ballot, the same procedure shall be followed until a nominee has received a majority of all votes cast. Once the election is completed and all the election officers have been elected, and all the district officers have been elected, the district officer, the district director will submit the election results to TMI and also display this on the district website. So this is the process in which the elections will take place. Now let me just go on to especially spend some time on determining the winner and how the voting will take place. Imagine that for a particular position, there are 5 candidates which are A, B, C, D, and E. And the number of district council members attending is 450. The first check, the approximate number of district council members is around 500, attending is 450. So the quorum has been met and we are okay to proceed with the election. The election starts taking place, and once on the election solution, which could be the e-voting solution, the number of votes cast is 400. And these 5 candidates receive the votes in those numbers as indicated on the screen. If you look at this now, at this point of time, candidate A has already received more than 50% of the votes that have been cast. Please note, it is 50% of the votes that have been cast and not 50% of the votes of the number of people attending the meeting. So in this case, the A has already received that number, and hence is automatically declared a winner with no need to go for round 2. Let's look at what happens in a slightly different scenario. Same thing, 5 candidates for the position A, B, C, D, and E. Number of district council members attending is 450. In round 1, the number of votes that candidate A gets is 180. The other 2 candidates get 85 and 80. And those are the percentages that you see in the next column. In this case, the person with the lowest number of votes, which is candidate E, as well as candidate D, who has received less than 10% of the votes, will not move into round 2. 3 candidates will then move into round 2, and in this round 2 we will have voting again. And now imagine a situation that for some reasons only 380 people have been able to vote in the round 2, of which candidate A has received 170 and candidate B 100 and candidate C 110, in which case the percentage that has been received by candidate A is 44.7, hence it's still not a majority, and we will now move on to round 3. But in this case, the candidate B, who has received the lowest number of votes in this round, will not move into round 3, but it will only be the candidate A and candidate C, where we will have a round 3 voting, and whoever is the member, who is a candidate who receives the majority of votes in that round, will be declared elected. I will quickly keep this slide on for about 30 seconds for you to assimilate this and understand this, and if there are any queries, to drop them in the chat box so we can take that up during the course of the question and answer session. Okay, so in summary, during the course of the last few minutes, we looked at the four things. One is, what are the positions that constitute the district elections? What is the eligibility for each one of these positions? And how is this eligibility determined? Then we looked at the nomination process, which starts with the appointment of the DLC chair by the district director, the call for nominations by the DLC chair, which goes across every member of the district, and the nomination coming in from the individual members, either self-nominations or nominations through another Toastmaster. And finally, the interview process and the selection of the nominated candidates. One key thing to note in this, which is a change from 2 years earlier, is the fact that no member who has not gone through the DLC nomination process cannot stand as a floor candidate. You need to have gone through the DLC nomination process to stand as a floor candidate. We then looked at the general guidelines. The general guidelines in terms of the voting eligibility. To be a voting member, you need to be a member in good standing and coming from a club in good standing. If you are from a club which is not in good standing, you are not allowed to vote, even though since you are representing that specific club. We also looked at the role of the credentials chair, who determines exactly who are the people who are eligible to vote and ensures that these credentials are in place. We will be using the e-voting platform during the course of 21-22 elections, and that is will be tested subsequently. The election officer for the district elections will be the district director, and he will conduct the elections on the day of the district council meeting. We subsequently went and looked at the conduct of the elections in the way the process, the announcement of the nominated candidate, firstly the sequence in which the elections will take place, starting with the district director, the program quality director, The club growth director, specifically this year for District 105, we will have the election for Club Growth Director 1 and Club Growth Director 2, followed by the division directors. For in the case of division directors, the division director role is considered to be 1, in which means that if you have been nominated as the potential candidate for a particular division and fail to win that election, you are allowed to stand as a floor candidate for any subsequent division election that is being conducted. We then moved on to the actual to the speeches which will take place in the case of multiple candidates for a particular position, and these speeches will be in the order of the last names of the candidates as recorded in the TMI roster. Once once these speeches are over, the voting will be conducted and the voting will be the counted votes will be displayed. Remember the winning determination. If any candidate to win the particular election needs to have got 50% plus 1 vote of the votes cast, not necessarily the number of members attending. The number of members attending will only determine the quorum. The number of votes cast will determine the winner and will take forward. We can, in cases where there are multiple candidates, we might end up having multiple rounds of voting till there is one single candidate who gets that 50% plus 1 vote. The determining factor of whether a candidate moved from first round to the subsequent rounds will be the fact whether the person has got more than 10% of the votes and is not the member receiving the lowest number of votes. So that in summary is what we talked about during this process of the district leadership elections. And finally, in case you are interested, the additional resources that you could use for going through the election process, the competencies, the bylaws, and also any other queries is this one, which is the governing documents related to the district leadership handbook. So let's take 30 seconds for you to assimilate, to make notes, ask any questions on the chat box. And after this 30 seconds, I will hand the stage back to the Program Quality Director, DTM Gurbinder. So let's take 30 seconds. In case you have any queries, put them in the chat box, or we can do that subsequently. Just take 30 seconds now. Good. Thank you very much for your time. Thank you, DTM Gurbinder, for this opportunity, and back to you for the further steps. Thank you.
Thank you so much, DTM Sandeep. Again, I would say the same thing. You have made a complex subject such simpler and such easy to follow. And I'm sure we have answered most of the questions that members had today. But now we have moving into the question answer session, and question answer session will be moderated by DTM Chetlur S. Prasad. All of you know Chetlur S. Prasad as one of the past division directors from Oman. He's a senior HR professional who lives in Oman since 2007. He likes to read a lot and also writes poems, by the way. He likes to watch cricket, and his favorite cricketer is Rahul Dravid. Absolutely the right choice, I would say. He's a member of the program quality team this year, and he has been contributing immensely to the various events, the contest planning, the contest modules. And this session also was choreographed, planned, and very well documented by Chetlur, who then moved with the alignment of 2 DTMs and presented it for you today. So please help me welcome Chetlur Prasad, the moderator of question answer session on the screen, along with DTM Sandeep Vengsarkar and DTM Hariharan. They will take your questions now. Mr. Zoom Master, can you please spotlight all 3 of them on the screen? Thank you. And you may post your questions in the chat box, which will be picked up by DTM Chetlur, and then he will put them up to the speakers. In the meanwhile, to get the recording and the presentations, please make sure you have put your name and the contact details in the Google form, which is there in the chat box now.
We have the first question now. This is for DTM Hari, because this is the area level contest. And the question reads, how are tiebreakers handled at the area level?
Very nice. So ideally what will happen is when there is a tie between the two candidates, the area director will cast his vote or her vote, and that breaks the tie. I hope that answers the question.
Okay, DTM Hari, again to you. Club members March renewal is only 7 and other March renewal is 0. Do they have a voting right?
If the March renewal is as of now, for next year as on 1st of April, there is nobody renewing, then automatically there is no member in good standing, so automatically the club will be out. You cannot have elections.
Yes. And if I remember right, this was actually stated by you during your presentation as well.
Yes, member in good standing.
Good that it's getting reinforced. There's one question says, we would like to ask about the election officer in club election, if it can be from an outside club.
Ideally, the election officer is supposed to be from within the club. Now, there is no written down guideline that the election officer cannot be from outside, but please try and understand it is better to have it from within, because that person will know the caliber and the credentials of the members who are applying for those particular roles. So please remember, it's always better to have it from within.
I think we can spend a few minutes of time from at the area level as well as district level in terms of canvassing. Apart from the 2 minutes of time that is being allocated, is canvassing allowed? And if that is allowed, then how it is at the district election level and then at the area level? So I think Hari, you can, DTM Hari, you can go first with the area. Then DTM Sandeep can come in for the division.
In fact, it is not as difficult in the area as it is in the district. So usually in the club and the area, it is the people can go across to the clubs and speak directly to the members. Now, there is no laid down guideline that you cannot have flyers and stuff like that. You can have your flyers and send it across to the club members. But yes, the 2 flyers will remain the way it is, and you cannot campaign, I think, 1 week before the election. So these 2 will always remain as the way it is. In fact, DTM Sandeep should be able to give more light on that.
Yeah, no, I think just from a campaigning perspective, the key thing from the district candidates campaigning for their positions, their contact with the district council members are restricted to 2 contacts. Now, when a contact is identified as a contact either through a phone call, a SMS, a meeting where the person or the candidate mentions to the district council member that he or she is standing for a particular election. Now that is restricted to 2 contacts per district council member per candidate. And the timeline is that one of these can be before 2 weeks of the district council date, and one of them can be between that 2-week period to the district council. So let's take an example. Our district council meeting is currently scheduled for the 21st of May. So 5th of May is the deadline for the first contact with the district council member in any one of these forms. And the second one is between 5th of May till the 21st of May. So that is the only level of campaigning that can happen by the candidate to the district council members. Any additional thing, if it brought to the notice of the district leadership committee or the district director, might mean that we will need to look into it in detail, and if required, need to have a disqualification of the candidate.
Thank you, DTM Sandeep. The next question is just to confirm for the club elections.
Yes.
In the council, we need 3 active members plus the immediate past president. Is that how the This is for the CLC, if I'm not.
Yes.
the
So ideally, it said that you need to have 3. So possibly the CLC chair could be one of them. So you can have a 3-member committee along with the CLC chair or CLC chair plus 3. So that's mandatory required is 3.
Okay. There's a nice question about area directors. Is area director not having voting right? That's the question. Then how come he breaks the tie? So this is something for.
Now
DTM
what
tie.
happens is we need to understand that when the elections happen, so let's take, for example, 12, you got 4 clubs, so you have 4 into 3, 12. And then you have the area PQD, the area secretary, and the area CG. And so these 2 will all come in and they will vote. If there is an equal number, then the area director can cast his or her vote and break the tie. You cannot have, if you do not have voting rights, then that vote cannot be cast. It's a very simple answer. In case in the very beginning you have that the thing has gone through and you have one which is already is a winner as compared to the other, then the area director need not have to vote at all.
Thank you, DTM Hari. The other question, again, this is more of reinforcement. We've talked about it. It says that when should we have area director election? The timing, So it's again, it's come up. Yeah.
2 weeks before and within 4 weeks after. 2 weeks before the DTAC and within 4 weeks after the DTAC.
Thank you. Again, DTM Hari, it's coming to you again. Can we debar a member in good standing to contest in club election who have not attended club meetings in the last 6 months? So
yes, that's why I said active and good member in good standing.
Correct.
So if I remember in earlier times in contests, it said that the member should be active. And in one of the contests, they had asked the secretary of the club to bring the register to prove that that member had attended out of the 26 meetings, at least 14. And we had to prove it because those days the signatures used to be there on the attendance register. It was at a division contest.
Okay. There's again a question about the rounds, the number of rounds that one can take.
Yes.
Then one of the criteria what we have already discussed is that we must be having that 50% plus 1 kind of a vote.
Perfect.
Not in terms of number of quorum, but the number of people actually voting on that particular for that position.
Correct.
So do you want to take that question again, or is it okay? It's up to you.
I don't mind taking that question. It's fine.
Okay. Now there's an example. So the question is area voters. The quorum are 19. The quorum is 12.
Correct.
Candidate A has got 5, B has got 4, and C has got 3 votes. Should it require second round?
Now, how many people have voted? So let us say only 12 have voted, and only 5 votes have come through to one person. You have to have the second round because 50% of the votes, as explained by DTM Sandeep, 50% of the votes plus 1 should be there as a majority for the other rounds to be waived off.
Okay.
This is mandatory.
So it's good. This is a very important point when you're conducting an election. Good, this question has come again. Okay, the other question, some of the division district appoint area directors without elections. Is it mandatory to follow the parliamentary process of election?
In fact, if DTM Murad would have been here, he would have blown his top. It is absolutely important that the election protocol has to be followed, is laid down, and it has to be followed to the T. That's why Robert rules were brought into play. And number 3, as I said, in fact, DTM Alita made a fantastic point. She said there is structure, there is transparency and trust. The structure comes from the laid down policy. Transparency comes from following the process, and being truthful comes in from that integrity. Nomination is not possible. You have to call for those you cannot just nominate a person and sit down. You have to have that nomination committee. You'll have those nominations coming in. If only one person is there, only then can the area director confirm that that person is area director. Else, if you've got multiple, it has to follow the election guideline. This is mandatory. And if the district or the TMI gets to know of such malpractices, they have the right to cancel the election and reconvene it and do it again with an external observer. That's a possibility.
Thank you. So this again for both of you can answer it. This is, can a candidate arrange a special Zoom meeting for his campaign purpose?
DTM, Sandeep, you want to take that? That's going one extra mile ahead.
See, I think this whole Zoom meeting has come into the picture because of the recent scenario. And as long as it counts as that one contact with the member and it follows the timeline as mentioned earlier, that will be allowed, but that will be considered as one contact with the district council member who's attending that meeting. Right. So as long as that firstly, it is only one is allowed before the 5th of May and one after the 5th of May, and will be counted as one contact with the district council members attending that meeting.
True.
I hope I have answered that question.
Yes.
Tricky one.
Okay, this is I'm actually, the questions have already been answered, which have probably have come back again. Then I'm just waiting for, if the time permits, we'll ask that again. The other question is for club and area director elections, 2 minutes speech is required or it is not required?
If you have more than one person, multiple people on a roll, it has to be done. Mandatory. Period.
I guess I've come to the end of the questions as of now, because there is one question again about the percentages of voting for the first and second round, which has already been answered. So
We have time left in the session, but since we have come to the end of questions and both the presenters have explained it so vividly and so explicitly that I think most of the questions got answered there itself. So let's conclude today's session. Now at this point, we are ahead of time, and the recordings will be shared with the people who have logged in their details in the Google form in the chat box. If you haven't done it so far, please do it now, because we will get your data from there and we will share details to you along with the presentations. The form is now posted again for those people who did not get it. With this, we formally conclude today's election protocols learning session with a big round of applause to DTM Hariharan, DTM Sandeep, DTM Chetlur, our Zoom master Qasim Deen, and our timer for the day, Abidul Islam. Let's put a big round of applause for each one of them.